And we begin tonight with the dramatic testimony in front of the American people today, the findings from the January 6th committee, their third hearing now, in this one focusing on former President Trump and the extraordinary pressure he placed on his Vice President Mike Pence in the weeks leading up to January 6th, and then what happened on that very day. Starting with a heated phone call from the Oval Office, the president, the vice president, and multiple witnesses to this call. The president pushing Pence to block the certification of the election on that night. Tonight, the images from the committee today from inside the Oval Office the morning of January 6th. Members of President Trump's inner circle, from daughter Ivanka Trump, top aides and counsel, all describing in testimony today the president's call to the vice president, describing the call as heated. The president telling Pence he had no courage, calling him a wimp, and worse, what we won't say here. After that call, the rally on the Mall, and initially the president's written speech did not mention Pence. But the committee today revealing the president added Pence to his speech, saying it was essentially all up to Pence, telling the crowd Pence had the power to overturn Biden's election victory, saying, quote, Mike Pence is going to have to come through for us. Even though Trump's inner circle, White House lawyers, and Pence himself had repeatedly told the president that the vice president does not have that power. And then after the violence was underway, the president, aware the attack was unfolding, at 2:24 p.m., the president then tweeting that Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done. The committee saying the crowd seeing that tweet and reacting, later those words, the chants, hang Mike Pence. The vice president later rushed out of the Senate chamber with his family to another room and then down to a secure underground location. At one point, they were just 40 feet from that mob, where he spent the next 4 hours, a confidential informant actually telling the FBI that the extremist group, the Proud Boys, would have killed Mike Pence if given the chance. The testimony today, what the president repeatedly ignored from those closest to him about what was legal, what was not, and what had never been done in the history of the United States. Still, the president pushed for it. Here's our chief Washington correspondent, Jonathan Karl, leading us off tonight.
In meticulous detail, the January 6th committee outlined Donald Trump's brazen effort to force his vice president to do something he clearly had no authority to do. Trump wanted Mike Pence to single-handedly overturn the election. Pence had told him no, but on the morning of January 6th, Trump called him one more time to demand that he do it.
When I entered the office the second time, he was on the telephone with who I later found out to be was the vice president.
Could you hear the vice president or only hear the president's end?
Only hear the president's end. And at some point it started off as a calmer tone and everything, and then became heated.
The conversation was pretty heated. It was a different tone than I'd heard him take with the vice president before.
I remember hearing the word wimp. Either he called him a wimp. I don't remember if he said, you are a wimp, you'll be a wimp. Wimp is the word I remember.
Less than an hour after that call, Trump addressed the massive crowd outside the White House. Aides testified that his prepared speech made no mention of Pence, but when he spoke, Trump repeatedly told the crowd that Mike Pence was the one person who could do what they wanted, overturning Biden's election victory.
Mike Pence is going to have to come through for us, and if he doesn't, that will be a sad day for our country. And Mike Pence, I hope you're going to stand up for the good of our Constitution and for the good of our country. And if you're not, I'm going to be very disappointed in you. I will tell you right now.
Trump was still speaking when Pence publicly announced he would defy Trump, remaining loyal to the Constitution instead.
I mean, the vice president had said, this may be the most important thing I ever say. And so
this meaning the statement?
The statement. And he really wanted to make sure that it was just so.
We're coming for you!
The reaction of the mob was instantaneous.
I'm telling you what, I'm hearing that Pence just caved.
No.
Is that true?
I didn't
I'm hearing reports that Pence caved.
No
I'm
way.
telling you, if Pence caved, we're going to drag through the streets. You politicians are going to get drugged through the streets.
Yeah.
President Trump watched it all unfold on television from the White House. Aides testified that Chief of Staff Mark Meadows went in to tell him about the violence at the Capitol, and Republican lawmakers and White House aides urged him to get his supporters to stand down. Instead, at 2:24 p.m., the president sent out a message attacking his vice president.
Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done,
to protect our country and our Constitution.
In the White House, Trump's own aides were shocked by his tweet.
When that tweet, the Mike Pence tweet, was sent out, I remember us saying that that was the last thing that needed to be tweeted at that moment. The situation was already bad, and so it felt like he was pouring gasoline on the fire by tweeting that.
Nothing but a traitor, and he deserves to burn with the rest of them.
We just heard that Mike Pence is not going to reject any fraudulent elector votes. That's right. You've heard it here first. Mike Pence has betrayed the United States of America.
As the mob broke into the Capitol, Pence was evacuated from the Senate floor to a nearby office, huddling with his family, his wife pulling the curtains so the mob wouldn't see them. Then, with the rioters just 40 feet away, the Secret Service rushed the vice president, his family, and top aides to a secure underground location. Greg Jacob was there with him.
Approximately 40 feet. That's all there was. 40 feet between the vice president and the mob. Mr. Jacob, you were there, seeing that for the first time.
I could hear the din of the rioters in the building while we moved, but I don't think I was aware that they were as close as that.
The Secret Service had cars in that underground parking garage, waiting to take Pence safely away from the Capitol.
The Secret Service directed us to get into the cars, which I did, and then I noticed that the vice president had not. Head of his Secret Service detail, Tim, had said, "I assure you we're not going to drive out of the building without your permission." And the vice president had said something to the effect of, "Tim, I know you, I trust you, but you're not the one behind the wheel." And the vice president did not want to take any chance that the world would see the vice president of the United States fleeing the United States Capitol.
The January 6th committee showed these never-before-seen photos, the vice president working the phones in that concrete garage for some 3 hours without even a chair to sit in.
Mr. Jacob, did Donald Trump ever call the vice president to check on his safety?
He did not.
Mr. Jacob, how did Vice President Pence and Mrs. Pence react to that?
With frustration.
Even after the attack, after the mob was cleared from the Capitol, Trump and his allies kept the pressure on Pence. Shortly before he was to certify the election, John Eastman, a lawyer advising Trump, emailed the vice president's counsel, saying it wasn't too late for Pence to change his mind.
What was Vice President Pence's reaction when you showed him the email where Dr. Eastman, after the attack on the Capitol, still asked that the vice president delay certification and send it back to the states?
He said, "That's rubber room stuff."
What did you interpret that to mean?
That was certifiably crazy.
Mr. Jacob testified that the vice president was never going to go along with Trump's scheme.
The vice president's first instinct when he heard this theory was that there was no way that our framers, who abhorred concentrated power, who had broken away from the tyranny of George III, would ever have put one person in a role to have decisive impact on the outcome of the election.
Pence knew that Trump was asking him to do something illegal and something that no other vice president had ever attempted.
No vice president in 230 years of history had ever claimed to have that kind of authority.
For guidance, Pence turned to former Judge Michael Ludwig, a widely respected conservative appointed by George H.W. Bush. Ludwig today declared if Pence had done what Trump wanted him to do, the consequences would have been dire.
That declaration of Donald Trump as the next president would have plunged America into what I believe would have been tantamount to a revolution within a constitutional crisis in America.
John Carr with us live from Capitol Hill tonight. John, you were on the air with us today all day long, and I know ABC News has learned that Donald Trump and Mike Pence haven't talked since last summer.
It's been a year, almost a year since they last talked, but Pence has said publicly and bluntly he believes Donald Trump was wrong. And, quote, there's almost no idea more un-American than the notion that any one person could choose the president.
And, John, one more question for you tonight. We learned today that after it became clear that the election would not be overturned the night of January 6th, that lawyer that President Trump had teamed up with on this scheme to halt the certification, John Eastman, that lawyer asked to be then included on the list of possible pardons?
He was looking for a pardon, and when he testified before this committee on video, David, that's him on the left, he took the Fifth Amendment more than 100 times, refusing to answer his questions.
John Carl with us tonight on this again. John, our thanks to you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.